Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Marissa Waterman. I'm the Marketing Director here at the Academy. Today's webinar is titled Fundamentals of Occupational Safety and Health and its Critical Integration with Environmental Management. Our Executive Director, Dr. Daniel Other, will serve as the moderator and will introduce our speaker today. During the presentation, you'll be able to submit a question by clicking on the Q&A icon on the bottom of your screen. Before we get started, Dr. Other would like to say a few words. Dan, how are you today?
Fantastic, Marissa. And I know Vinny was asking me in the green room, Dan, you've got a Howard University hat on. Just want to remind everybody, just 4 weeks from now, we will be hosting the Academy's Spring Awards celebration in Washington, D.C. And we are so grateful for Howard University for serving as our local community host for that event. So 4 weeks in April, please join us at Howard University in Washington, D.C. Up on their screen is our patrons of the Academy. The patrons are those firms, those utilities who provide financial support for the activities that we do at the Academy. Everything we do depends on that financial support, and we are so grateful to these organizations who have stepped up to be able to financially support us. Thank you to the patrons of the Academy in particular for making events like today free to our members. We're incredibly grateful to our patrons. Now, today is a webinar, and I'm really excited about our speaker. I'm also really excited that he wants to try a little bit different format. So we've got Dr. Vinny Flores, and we're going to be talking about fundamentals of occupational safety and health and its critical integration with environmental management. But one of the things that's going to be a little bit different about this is I'm going to actually be interviewing Vinny live in real time in front of all of you. And believe it or not, we've rehearsed this tiny bit, but not too much. So fingers crossed, everything goes well. But don't forget, when you've got questions that we're going to talk about with Vinny, drop them in the Q&A. That's at the bottom of the Zoom screen, because I'll be monitoring those there, and I'll be pitching those questions to Vinny as we go through with our presentation. So without further ado, I would like to introduce today's speaker. Dr. Vinny Flores is an experienced sustainability, water resource ESG, environment and occupational safety professional in mining and energy. He earned a PhD in civil environmental engineering from Colorado State, an MBA from Texas A&M, and an MPA in economics and environmental management from Harvard University. He's currently the director of health, safety, environment, quality, and sustainability at Axios Industrial Group. He's also a professor of sustainability at the SCAMA Graduate School in France and the Herons Postgraduate School in Peru. Dr. Flores is an environmental fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science and a proud, long-term, and active member of the American Academy of Environmental Engineers and Scientists. He's an editorial board member of the Public Works Management and Policy Journal, which focuses on planning, financing, and sustainable development of critical infrastructure systems. Dr. Flores is a renowned international speaker, researcher, visionary, and prolific writer on the topics of water resources, environment, sustainability, ESG, climate change, mining, energy, and occupational safety. And somewhere in all of those things that he's doing, he has also managed to find the time to become board certified with the American Academy for Environmental Engineers and Scientists. His specialty is in water supply and wastewater. And Vinny, thank you so much for your time serving as treasurer of our Academy from 2020 to 2022. We are so excited to have you here. Vinny, please welcome.
Thank you so much, Dan. What a pleasure to be in with you and Marissa, of course, and all the attendees to this event. So I guess the goal of this webinar is just to provide the fundamentals of occupational safety and health, but of course the critical integration that we have with environmental management. We'll talk about environmental management to all our friends from the community of environmental engineers and scientists. So I guess we can kick off with the safety moment.
I love this, Vinny. Every meeting I'm at with you, you always start with a safety moment. So friends online, grab your cell phones that's setting nearby, because here's one of the things that we're going to do. We want to make this webinar interactive. Vinny didn't want this just to be a talking head or just he and I conversing. He wanted this to also involve all of you as an audience. And so we're going to do that through a piece of software that's called Poll Everywhere. So take a look at this lovely safety moment picture that Vinny provided for us. Get your mind around it. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to ask all of you to summarize this picture in just one word. So get a word in mind for looking at this picture. Just hang on to that one word. Whatever that one word happens to be, get one word in mind when you're looking at this picture. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to collect that one word from everyone. Now, the way that we're going to do that is I'm going to actually share this Poll Everywhere software. So what's going to show up now is a set of instructions for how to be able to answer. And so grab that cell phone, point it at that QR code, and follow that link to Poll Everywhere. And what will pop up on your cell phone is a question. In one word, summarize this picture. So I'm going to put my one word in. Hopefully all of you put your one word in, and I'm going to go over and we're going to take a look at the responses that have been put in here. And so with Vinny, we got the instructions up. Now we're switching over. Let me get Poll Everywhere to go where we want it. Here we go. In one word, summarize this picture. Vinny, I love it.
Excellent. We have a whole array of answers from cute to trapped, fun, prepare, protection, ingenuity, and think and so forth. And thank you so much for those answers.
I think doom's probably the top one up there. The larger the word, the more people answered that one. So folks, keep that phone nearby. We're going to do a couple of these throughout this presentation. It's a fun way to be able to hear what you're thinking as we go through and do these. Vinny, I love this, my friend. What a creative way to get the audience engaged. Thanks so much. Now, friends, one of the things is that we are the American Academy of Environmental Engineers and Scientists. So we understand environmental engineering, we understand environmental science. And Vinny, the first question that we're going to ask you is, okay, so as environmental engineers and scientists, we get that. What's occupational health and safety? Vinny.
In that, first of all, about the safety moment, just a reminder to our friends that it is just a moment, and you can put a picture, you can just say a word, but it's certainly a culture that is very well known in the energy and mining areas, but also in other industrial, groups, spaces, and just doesn't need to be work related. It could be anything, because we all want to come back home safe. In the same way, we got in, we need to get out with the same number of fingers, everything, no scratches, just probably a little tired, but exactly in the same way. Okay. So what is occupational health and safety? Well, it's everything that has to do related to safety and health when we work. I don't need to read what we typed in the screen, but certainly is all the potential injuries or illnesses or near misses, which is also an incident that can happen during our tasks, work-related duties. And of course, the most important thing for health and safety is to protect the most valuable resource, which is the human resource.
Now, Vinny, that makes sense to me, right? Being an environmental engineer, I can understand that. And I often use the term vulnerable populations, but when I think about that from kind of an environmental engineering science standpoint, I'm often thinking about young kids or people that are immune compromised, or maybe people that are older or have special needs or something. What's different though about the occupational space than what we would think of broader? Are there any differences in terms of populations or
Yes.
exposures, or is there anything different between occupation and environment when we're thinking about populations?
Yeah, but they are related.
Okay.
Absolutely. When you, the occupational health and safety, even though we're going to see it actually in the next few slides with an example, has to do with the people doing a job, but not doing it properly or being impacted by something else can affect the community where we live. So
Okay.
we're going to see it in a little case study that we have in a few more slides. So we are all related. And of
Okay.
course, we are related with the environment also.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, okay. So slight different populations, but some of the same kind of approaches. So if I understand environmental engineering and science pretty well, I should be thinking in that framework, but now I'm narrowing it to that occupational space. Okay. I can follow that. That makes sense. So Vinny, next question we've got up, right? Okay. So now that I know what's occupational safety and health, so then how is it related to environmental engineering and science, environmental management in general? How do these things go together?
We have a little slide there then about what we call in general environmental management. No, in the environment, which really the long definition or the broad definition of environment includes humans. Many do not know that. No, but really we humans are part, of course, of the environment. No, we cause harm, but also we can cause solutions to issues within the environmental management. So environmental management has to do with the management of all these, perhaps all these environmental activities, environmental events, environmental programs. So managing all of that, which we environmental engineers and scientists have a lot to say. We are professionals in that field. Now, in many spaces, we have professionals. They are called the HSE professionals or EHS professional. The H obviously for health, the S for safety, and the E for the environment. So, like in my case, that's one of the main duties in where I work. You have to come from one of the three fields. And as a matter of fact, I was talking yesterday with a colleague of mine, one of my customers, and he comes from the health side. So he's an industrial hygienist. No, he came from that, but he had to learn safety and learn more about environment. In my case, when I started this in my career, I knew the E, the environmental side, and I have to learn the health and safety and get certifications or degrees or whatever to enhance my background. So it is important that we professionals, even though that we are only health and safety, we know about the environment. And also it's important that we only working in the environmental side at least have a wide knowledge about the health safety. And we're gonna see the next slide that actually explains with an example that if you made then
That makes sense. That makes sense to me. Okay. Because one of the things you just said that I found really interesting is that it's also that the other people are part of the environment, right? Because I think about, if I'm trying to treat drinking water or I'm trying to treat sewage, I'm not so worried about the other people being involved. But you know what? It makes sense in occupational. If the person working next to me makes a mistake, that mistake might impact me. So it would make sense that they would be part of the environment. I appreciate that one. So Benny, we've got this case study, this example. So this looks like a pretty disastrous event. Can you tell us a little bit more about it so we can use it to have some discussion?
Yes, Dan and friends, this event happened 11 years ago. About 11 years ago, in a small town, actually. They call it City of West, but it really is a town of West. It's a small town near 75 miles south of Dallas, near Waco, actually. A small city, and there was a fertilizer plant, the West Fertilizer Company. And there was an explosion, a real tragedy. So it gave us so many lessons to everybody. And I remember because I live in Texas. And I remember this incident very well. And doing the root cause, doing the analysis of this thing, was shown that actually the three main components, the health, safety, and environment, were involved. And we'll briefly mention them. As you can see in the screen, this was an explosion followed by a heavy fire. The 15 people lost their lives. Of course, they were in basically two categories. 10 of the people who died were firefighters, mostly volunteers. They were volunteers. We were doing a training in the city, in the town, doing a training.
Right.
And they saw the fire. They went there to help. There was a fire captain who was off service, but we all are ready to help. Really, I do it. It's my job. You see my truck. I have everything in case of an emergency, not only related to my workers or me, but anybody in the public. I'm ready to jump. I'm trained. I hope sometimes I had to intervene, and I believe I've done a good job. So we are committed to help. So these 10 people did not secure themselves, really, because there's a golden rule. You first need to be safe to intervene. And unfortunately, they lost their lives. So we had 5 members of the public also in the explosion. The explosion was massive. As I said before, 15 people died. More than really around 500 other people were injured. Several other firefighters were also injured severely. Just to give you an amount of the explosion, was a 2.1 earthquake magnitude. 2.1. Imagine, wow. I mean, just that explosion. You cannot see it very well in the picture, but you can see a crater. I mean, a hole in the ground that is just massive. I'm sure it took a long time to just cover them. Everything completely destroyed. All the buildings and the surroundings completely destroyed. A tremendous measure. And of course, like always, the economic impact. $230 million in losses in that small little town. It's just amazing. So many lessons learned, but really the root cause was an environmental management failure.
Okay. So you start with the environmental management failure, but then what made it worse in terms of loss of life, right? Those helpers that ran towards the event, but I heard you loud and clear, I got to protect myself first. I got to start with being safe as I'm responding to my work.
Absolutely. And the root cause was a rail car containing about between 20 to 30 tons of ammonium nitrate.
Okay.
Highly explosive. And we know many explosives used in terrorist attacks use, of course, ammonia.
Sure.
So definitely there were, if we read the report, which is in the internet, done by actually several agencies and several professionals that they are really experts on this subject matter, concluded it was, an environmental management. So this clearly shows that how can this thing escalate, an event can escalate and impact the H and the S, but also there are H and S's, events related to health and safety, that can also impact the environment.
Sure.
A malfunctioning, somebody being perhaps sick, falls, accidentally activates a system that causes a spill, for instance. So these 3 elements are together, and I encourage our friends, our members in the environmental engineers and scientists to always be aware that we are attached to the health and safety component.
I appreciate that, Benny. I appreciate that. I mean, it's sad for the loss of life of anyone. It's sad for the public, and it's sad. We always explain to our kids when something bad happens, look for the helpers, look for the good people that are running to help. And it's important lesson learned, because of course we're going to find these things in our workplace as environmental engineers and scientists, whether it's chlorine to be able to deal with, producing clean drinking water, or whether it's mechanical equipment that we have on sites. I mean, certainly we're going to face hazards in our workplaces, and those folks around us are going to experience some hazards as well. So Vinny, in that vein, what are some of the major health risk factors? Like what things do we need to be worried about? And as we're getting into that, Vinny, as people are thinking about this, I love that you've got a good way for us to transition with something else. You want to talk about this one just a little bit?
Yeah, you know what, Dan, I obviously, when I teach a class or just addressing an audience, I show some of these pictures. And many, they look like jokes. Obviously, this is not a real case. It's a reenactment or something, no? But certainly, I always tell this to the students, that especially the young students, when I show this, that I talk about doing something like this that happens, by the way. These things, believe it or not, happens. Many of the students say that I'm very negative, that I only look into the negative side, and I need to also look at the positive side, which of course there is always a positive. No, but we are always interested in the balance, the final balance, is that right? Of course, there's always pros and cons, but at the end, what we care really at the end is what is the balance. So I believe we have some questions for the audience.
We do. We've got another poll. So folks, taking a look at this picture, think about, I know it's going to be tough. It's pretty easy, as Vinny said, to pick one word that describes what is horrible about this picture. But think about the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? So challenge yourself. When you look at this image, can you find anything about this image that's good? And then let's think about the other. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our poll everywhere. So I'm going to share. So hang on with me 1 second as we get back in. Make sure you grab your cell phones so that we can go back in and do this. For those of you that need the QR code, it's up here on the top of the slide. I'll come back here and make sure that you've got your instructions. So do that QR code, scan that in one more time, point your phone at that. And what should pop up for you is this next question that we're looking at. In one word, give us a good, give us a bad, and give us an ugly. One word, a good, a bad, and an ugly. So we're looking for you to put in a couple of words here. I'm going to go ahead and show some of the responses. So, there's a good. Somebody thought there was some proper shoes. That's okay. Safety first, maybe not. Oh, well, at least somebody's got some. Oh, there we go. Some teamwork. Fantastic. Oh, they've got hearing protection on. Okay. Using that circular saw, and very innovative. So certainly some of the good. Make a good sweater, nice clothing. Make sure you put in some bad and some ugly. I guess no means that there is nothing good about that picture, Vinny. Yeah, a little bit of stupidity. Certainly that's part of that one. Some good PPE. I appreciate that. Vinny, I think some of this, like you said, it's kind of it's a staged image. And so we're getting some, very interesting. Very interesting. I appreciate that one. Does the picture have stereotype to it? That's important for us to think about. Good hearing protection. Very nice. Very nice. So, Vinny, I'm going to go back and share our friends. Dangerous injury. Fantastic. I'm going to come back over here. Don't do it. I'm going to come back over here and share our slide. So help us find the good. Now, let's transition back over into kind of the real part. So just to remind everybody, we asked Vinny the question, what are some of the major health risk factors? We did a little tongue-in-cheek that we're always looking for balance. Vinny, help us understand, what are some of these health hazards?
Yeah, there are many health hazards that they are explained there, but I wanted to briefly say something about risk. Now, we are taking a risk in almost anything that we do. Now, even right now, we are always taking a certain risk. So, but we want to do a job with managing the risk properly. So I remember using one of my employers for managing very hazardous environments. We had a matrix in which we identify the risk, the way of mitigating it, and asking if we can really actually do it. Because if we were not able to do it, certainly we should not be conducting that kind of activity. No? But before also I list the health hazards, I want to comment on the picture. And the comment is not for necessarily for the two guys who are there doing what they're supposed to be doing, because our audience, obviously, they got the point and they know what's going on. And they have some the little pros here, but they're doing the wrong thing. It's for the ones who are observing this act. If we let these people do what they do and we do not intervene, we are also at fault, because we need to exercise our stop work authority. And the stop work authority is the stop work obligation. Because if we do not intervene and stop them, we are giving them the authorization to proceed. I mean, this is difficult. Many times, many people don't like to be stopped, but we, in our companies, in my company, for instance, we have a full stop work authority. And we don't need to get into a, in a position to be aggressive or create any other situations that could be dangerous. We just need to report it, stop work immediately, and may not be the case. Sometimes we may stop something that was not exactly the case to be stopped. But if you feel that you are at risk, an excessive risk, you're unsafe, the work needs to be stopped. And by the way, we have a non-retaliation policy, and we receive our cards, and clearly states that you are getting the authority to stop the job. And if somebody's asking you about something or we try to retaliate, you have a phone number that goes directly to our CEO. I mean, there is the value of stop work for us. But let me now go and talk about health hazards. And you can read it in the screen. There are many health hazards, many related to the environmental space, chemicals, something the environmental engineers and scientists know about it, handle about it, manage them, and so forth. Even noise pollution. These are all environmental topics that we as environmental professionals deal with. So how important that these environmental events that could happen can impact the health and safety of our employees. There are so many. And actually, I wanted to talk about something about escalation. The events can start as an environmental event, but it can escalate within the environmental space, but also can impact health and safety, can impact quality, can impact many other areas. So it is so important for us as professionals to have be well-rounded, have a general knowledge, and certainly know the risks that we are doing when we do a task, or we plan to do a task. Identifying the risks are extremely important. And managing the risk, of course, is the ultimate goal. No, there are some risks that we cannot be managed. Therefore, we should not be doing the job. Absolutely. You can read the
well, I was going to say, if I look at these, right,
Sure.
the first three, pretty normal, right? Environmental engineer and scientist, I'm accustomed to make sure people don't get exposed to a pesticide or a herbicide, or that they don't get radiation, or they don't get, diarrhea in drinking water. That part I get. And I guess I've been around to enough industrial sites where, the equipment part even kind of makes sense. I don't want to have a trip hazard. I don't want an extension cord where I shouldn't have it. But interestingly, I start to look at your ergonomic, I think about vibrations, but Vinny, the psychological, that's pretty far away from kind of my normal bread and butter environmental engineering and science. So how do you engage in that coming from, the perspective of the normal academy member? How do we learn about and engage to be able to understand what is that psychological hazard risk, and how do we engage in that and help support people?
Yeah, we haven't talked about OSHA, really one of the main regulatory agencies that we follow here in the US. And then, by the way, the model is used worldwide. But about 3 months ago, I was reviewing they have a database for the SIF, serious incidents and fatalities, SI. So it was 4 or 5 months ago. I always read it because I find there's always lessons learned. So the investigations, what happened, when did it happen, and mostly fatalities. So I reviewed the first 10 fatalities, and this is also, I seen this something very similar right after the pandemic. Out of the top 10 fatalities, 6 were homicides and suicides at work.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Incredible. So obviously we have to report it. In many cases, they are not what we call a recordable. Recordable is an event that requires something beyond first aid. No, it requires medical treatment.
Sure.
But these events are also are personal.
Okay.
But we have our personal problems, issues, our personal loads, and we come to work with them. And things happen in the work environment. It impacts tremendously our community, our workers, and so forth. I remember an event that happened many years ago that I investigated. This was, in my opinion, a suicide case in which an employee hit the train.
Oh,
yeah, not the train hit him, but still and lost his life. So look at this, all of these events that have to do with psychological problems that some employees have. They are brought into the workforce and creates all these other events and threats and so forth. Really, what I saw with OSHA, it really surprised me, but it shouldn't surprise me because during and after the pandemic, due to the stress and perhaps other reasons that obviously goes beyond our area of knowledge, created such an environment for conducive to suicides at the workplace. Now, managing them, there's all entire protocols. We follow, of course, all the different kind of protocols. We know how to report it, investigate it, and so forth. There are many agencies that investigate some of these events. But also, you can see also about equipment that
sure.
about malfunctioning, breakdowns. The other day, amazingly, I discovered, for instance, that a forklift, this is a minor event, really minor, no injuries, of course, no, that there was a poor design of a forklift that touched the body of the forklift when the wheels turn. I don't think anybody here that drives would ever see that when you turn your wheels,
That it
would
would
touch the
the car.
body of the vehicle. It would be unthinkable to, well, in this case, it did happen.
Oh, wow.
It was an almost new unit that had a flaw. There was a poor mechanical design. So it's interesting that all of these become hazards that impact the health, the well-being, and of course, the environment in general.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Vinny. That is helpful, right? Because I mean, we can see the ones that most of us in environmental engineering and science would normally think about. It's good to think about, the extra ones, right? Like, the back brace, the right kind of shoes, making sure you're doing preventative maintenance. But I really did appreciate that you've got the psychological on here, because that's something that I and probably many of our colleagues wouldn't necessarily have thought about, somewhat unique in the occupational space compared to what we're normally perhaps accustomed to in environmental engineering and science. So, Vinny, if we've got all these risks, like you said, we can't have zero risk, right? So how do we manage this stuff anyway?
And it's important then to see the next picture that shows actually something that we in health and safety, in EHSE, health, health, and environment, we always talk about. Risk is always for us something that we need to constantly assess and manage, always. So for instance, in the top picture, we see an event which is high probability and low impact. And this is, forgive me, I'm recovering from a cold here. The high probability and low impact. This is very common in regular activities. Now, the companies that we're going to talk in a few minutes, they have high culture, high HSE or EHS cultures, have managed the risks very well. But a high probability, low impact is something that, like for instance, you would have somebody hammering, and hammering not properly, you hit one of your fingers. Now, very minor, first aid, low impact, but the probability of doing it is generally high. No?
Makes sense.
The second one is low probability, low impact. This is something that we always like. No, it's a very good scenario. You can see the person is crossing that little hole, crossing the little space without no problems. The third one deserves a special few more words, and I leave it for a second there and go to the last one, which is high probability, high impact. We will never do. No, this is something that we would not get engaged in those kind of activities. But the one that is with a red circle is what we call process safety. And process safety is for events that rarely happen, but when they happen, they are catastrophes. And we had many. The Challenger, for instance, was one of them, and it is widely studied. There was a mining event here in the US that took the life of quite a few people. And I remember the regulator, MSHA, no, mining, Occupational Safety for Mining, and MSHA issue a penalty, the largest in the history of the industry, really, due to, of course, lack of risk management. And this many people lost their lives in that event. But we have many cases here in oil and gas also. There was the Piper Alpha. This is a platform that was in the North Sea that was flooded by a huge wave and just completely destroyed the structure in many fatalities. Another example was the Horizon rig, in the Macondo well, which I remember very well, very close to Louisiana. And that event had many lessons learned for us. One of the main one is we never cut corners. We don't do that. We don't cut corners. No, and complacency was also a factor. No? A brand new structure that, of course, huge economic losses, but the most important losses were, I believe, the 11 or 12 people that lost their lives and many others injured. And that, so there is a case of a process safety, which has a specific name for us.
Okay, so this would be the crash, the explosion, something that doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's a big deal. And you're saying that the take-home lesson here is that we refer to those as process safety, and maybe there's something where we get a little bit complacent. We cut a corner somewhere. We don't follow a checklist. We get too accustomed to doing the same task, and maybe we slip in how we manage the task. Is that kind of
yes,
capturing that?
Absolutely. We work in chemical plants and work in many industries that poses risk to everybody, not only the workers, but the community. They have a specific process safety plan. It's different than the first one, which is the regular occupational safety. It's different. They have to do so many checks. The checks and balances need to match all the time. So this is a special, if I can use the word, a special animal. It's a special field that focuses and constantly checking. And we have industries like liquefied natural gas. It has never had an incident in probably 80 years. Nuclear energy in the US No, we've
Sure.
seen many other nuclear disasters around the world, and the U.S. have been really very, with a few exceptions, I would say is quite safe. Actually, it's very safe because they have an incredible plan for process safety. Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I appreciate that one. That helps clarify for me. So now, all right. So help me understand though. Obviously, you said there's no risk. You said there are things though that have low probability and high risk and or high impact. You said there's things that kind of there's lots of probability but low impact. We got to manage this somehow. So help us understand how we manage those.
Yeah, one of the ways we manage is in the triangle, the inverted triangle that you see at the right hand side.
Okay.
Now, obviously, if you have a hazard and you completely eliminate the machines, the equipment, the people, whatever is in that space, to eliminate the hazard completely, you don't have to worry about it because it's gone. Now, you have a compressor that may explode. When you get rid of the compressor, it doesn't exist. Obviously, the risk is there are perhaps other risks, but not that one. The other one is you substitute for something else that is probably less dangerous, you can manage it better. The next one is what we call engineering controls. Engineering controls is basically you isolate people from the hazard. If you think that there is going to be the risk of an explosion where you put a wall in between the explosion and the people, no?
Is this kind of like where we think about like radiation in the medical community, where the operator is at a distance from. Okay.
Engineering controls are usually physical controls, are very effective.
Okay.
The administrative controls are less effective. And the administrative control would be just putting a sign, for instance, don't enter, or training people to do certain activities. But we know that we can fail. The sign can be blown by the wind. The sun can actually make some of the letters disappear, the colors disappear. So administrative controls are not as effective.
And would that include kind of like lockouts, right? Like where I've got, like if I'm dealing with power and I'm going to shut it off and I've got to lock it off, or is that's the space that we mean administrative controls?
The lockout tagout is more into the engineering, because engineering you have a physical key, but also is I would say that is you and I are right in this thing. It's right almost in the gray area, because at the end, in lockout tagout, which we call LOTO, LOTO, you also have administrative controls. You have an administrative control, that with your key, I mean, you are trained how to use that key. And the last person who uses his or her key needs to do something. So, but sometimes the training is not right, the coordination is not right, or somebody activates a system, which happens, unfortunately, even these days, activates an active system or does an activity performs an activity in an active system without even being locked out and tagged out.
Sure.
The last one is our own PPE, and our attendees mentioned that one when we're talking about when we asked them the questions about PPE, personal protective equipment. And again, it helps us to manage certain kind of risks. Obviously, sometimes it's not enough, even though we use respirators and advanced equipment with us, personal protection equipment. It requires some of the solutions that you see above. And to the left side, I put an example about a noisy compressor. It's just an example. You can see it at your own leisure. You can download the presentation. You can see it. But how you can, because the noisy compression is producing obviously noise, which is form of pollution. And then noise, how can you eliminate the noise? Well, you can eliminate it in many ways. One is to just get rid of the equipment. The other thing would be to put a barrier between the equipment and the person who is being impacted by this by the noise. Or you can wear PPE, hearing protection, and so forth. Or give rules. You don't work that close to or you don't need to be exposed so long because the time of exposure for noise is key. And
So
it's,
Vinny,
by the way, it's
Vinny,
very,
let me just say, I was shocked when I saw this slide, and here's why I was shocked.
Mhm.
I would have thought that PPE would have been the first thing that we went to. If you had asked me, hey, Dan, what do you use to protect people? I would have answered this pyramid almost the exact opposite. And I find it really interesting, and it's really helped me understand something the way you described it. Right? Just get rid of the problem in the first place rather than put all this extra equipment. So, help me understand a little bit more like the why PPE is the last resort instead of the first resort. It's a little counterintuitive, I think.
Yeah, we use PPE certainly to mitigate certain risks. We cannot physically carry equipment and just take care of the complete risks. I mean, we need to use administrative and of course engineering controls and others to really solve the entire risk scenario. PPE is only effective for certain things. Of course, some PPE needs to be manipulated, like respirators. No, it needs to be worn properly. Imagine that you have this is why males need to be clean shaven.
Right.
I always do. In all, you will see safety people who are in safety, or HSC people who are, or EHS people who are in the field. They have exposure. They have at some moment wear a respirator. There's also certain rules for wearing the respirator,
Sure.
hygienic rules and others. So they can allow you to manage events that are unplanned. Unplanned events is always the key word.
This is a great takeaway, because it really changes the way again, maybe other colleagues might not, but if you had asked me, I would have probably answered with PPE first. So Vinny, this is incredibly useful. So clearly there must be a whole set of rules out there, right? This is not an infant field. This is a very mature area. And just like we in environmental engineering and science, we would think about like NEPA or Clean Water Act or safe drinking. Like we know that we've got some regulations. We know EPA. We know agencies that we would go to. So what are the regulators, when you're talking occupational safety and health, where do we turn to understand what we should be looking at or working with?
And we have many agencies, many organizations. Most of them are at the federal level, but also we have at the state level in the U.S. The one that we deal very often, and some of them, by the way, overlap.
Okay.
It's a different story. It's agency has been around for a long time,
right.
And for everything really onshore that is not related to mining, is basically OSHA.
Okay.
And there's regulations, federal regulations that are law. It's the law that we need to follow. And you have MSHA, very strict, much smaller organization, but that deals with mining. In the and NIOSH is the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, which is basically are the scientists. They are the ones who are telling us, if the glasses, if the protective glasses that we're using needs to have a certain standard for a certain task.
Okay.
So they are the ones who come out with that. So we use NIOSH as our technical backup when we do all these regulations. And
NIOSH produces the evidence, but OSHA or MSHA, those are more the policing. That's more the
enforcement, right?
Okay.
They like the word enforcement more than policing. So
fair enough.
We have a wonderful relationship with OSHA. Let me tell you, these agencies are also educate us often. So we meet with them not necessarily meet in an audit kind of scenario, but also we meet with them to discuss changes or events, and there is always something really something that is addressed. I go every year to a conference, a mining conference in Alabama, in MSHA. Always is kicked off by the event is kicked off by by an MSHA official. Now, we also have the FMCSA, which is the Federal Motor Carrier Administration. That has
Well, I
to
was going to say, now that was the one that was weird to me, right? Like I think about the FAA and airplanes, and I think about the FRA and railroads, but what exactly is the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration? What part of it is that?
Well, they regulate the transportation of vehicles in our highways.
Okay.
And many commercial vehicles, not all, but many are what we call DOT, not Department of Transportation. So they are regulated by the Department of Transportation. And there are very strict rules, and we have enforcement officers. You probably seen them around when there's an 18-wheeler being stopped by a different kind of patrol car. It's not, but they are police officers, and they check immediately if the driver, for instance, has done what we call hours of service. So hours of service, the goal is that this person rests enough to drive. We don't want.
Okay.
There is ways for these guys to. Now everything is electronic, of course, but also the vehicles is in good condition, and they are carrying good condition and also following the rules, like the proper weight. We don't want vehicles that are overloaded and causing other issues. So this is an organization that we know well, because I've been dealing with many of these vehicles, that have to, and they have every company that is registered with the Department of Transportation has a record, and because there is always, not always, but we see penalties due to a faulty light. As simple as that. To other things, there are vehicles that are not supposed to be driven in the public highways because of issues with safety. No?
Got it.
You mentioned already the railroad, aviation, and of course the last one is the OSHA for the state of California. So the state of California, and a few other states, not Texas, do have an equivalent of OSHA for the state. So they have extra regulations. State of California is known not only for safety, but also for environment.
Interesting. Good. So we got to think about the state and the local ones as well. So, okay. So now let's transition a little bit. We've got a lot of good background, keeping track of the time, looking where we're at. Now we got to get some practical stuff, Vinny. So what is an HSE management system?
Right. So you can see the answer right there. No, but first of all, this is not like a software. Now, everybody uses a software because the management, the HSE management system is a repository of our policies, procedures, best practices, standards, but also it's a repository of the history of the company. So if we have an incident, by the way, as you can see, I'm not using the word accident.
Right.
It's a long story. Because OSHA recommends that we use the word incident.
Okay.
Incident means that this is something that is preventable. All the incidents are preventable. 100%.
Okay.
Yes, all the incidents are preventable. And but I use also the word events because an incident is different than an event. An event could be anything, but some of these events can become incidents. Also,
and some of those events could actually be an act. Okay, that's
absolutely
great.
Absolutely.
Oh.
I mean, you come with a headache to work. It's an event, but due to the headache, intense headache, you can fall, and they become an incident. Really
interesting. And so you would have to keep track. Okay.
So anyway, so the management system is a repository of all of this.
Okay.
So when we need to know the history of our events that we had, when we need to bring up policies, when everything is in management system, it's a key component for doing the right thing, really. And their systems are very robust. Their systems are very large. Their systems they are everywhere. And these large companies have a management system that sits in the cloud. So no matter where you at, no matter the language you speak, you can always have access to that system and have all the tools to store data, retrieve information, gives you information about regulations in a specific state or country that probably is not pertinent to the US, where you find it in the management system. So it's one of our main tools.
Makes
And we'll
sense.
see it
Makes sense. And so then how do we then turn this, because you talked about this being a culture and how important is this? And I believe this is our last one for folks to grab your phones. We're heading into, don't forget to put some questions in the QA, but Vinny, we've got a couple of pictures here and I think we've got a couple of opportunities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to do, so folks, take a look at these, right? So we're talking about HSE culture values. So we're going to look at that picture on the left. And we're going to think about what one word would we think about for that picture on the left. And then, as Vinny pointed out, words matter. So there's, events and incidents and accidents and all of these kinds of things. So assuming that the picture on the right is occupational, and it turns out this isn't just a picture, this is actually a video. Folks, listen to this video on the right.
It's finally a Spider-Man. Just cruising to town. Where the hell we're going? 70.
So in one word, we're going to get out those phones. In one word, we're going to do that HSE culture for that picture on the left. And then we're going to do one word for that culture on the right. Stick with me 1 minute. I'm going to bring up our Safari so that you can scan that QR code again. So in one word, you're going to tell us what that picture on the left, that person that was down in that trench with that backhoe way up above them. And then we're going to do in one word, we're going to do that picture on the right, what looked like Spider-Man on the back of a truck at 70 miles an hour. So we're going to see a little bit here. So Vinny gets some sense, yes, cave-in, collapse, risk, unsafe, death definitely would be one that I think would appear there in that one. Foolish, roadkill. That's going to be our one on the left, on the right here. We're going to look at this on one word on that picture on the right, where somebody thinks they're Spider-Man. So there's the QR code. Feel free to scan that one in. So when we're looking at that 70 miles an hour, somebody said they were Spider-Man in the back of a truck. Now, assuming that, yeah. All right. Yeah, probably illegal. Definitely stupid. Certainly momentum. Okay. Vinny, we've kept everyone awake till the end. That's a positive of having done the polls. We'll appreciate that. Daredevil, foolhardy, off the deep end, illegal. So Vinny, you were talking about this in a culture context, right? The value of culture. And so one of the things you had talked about was this maturity model. So how does that fit into culture?
Well, the culture is the way we do things, the way we act. It's not only as an individual, but it's also as a community, it's in an office environment, in a work environment. So culture is important. So we have to cover a culture that we follow certain things. Well, in the HSE world, there's 5 stages that you evolve. And the one that you have in purple, which is what we call the basic, right where in the bottom, is basically no culture. If something happens, you just get the hell out of there. You just run away.
Run the other way, not my problem.
Could be the right way or the wrong way, but certainly there is absolutely no rules. There's nothing there. There's no management system. There's no training, just nothing. The next one that you see in red, by the way, there's an arrow there going up in probably 45 degrees that says improving maturity level. So more mature companies, culture-wise, move in that direction. So the red one is the reactive. We only act when something happens. If nothing happens, we don't do anything.
Sure.
The last one is we're compliant. So we comply compliance, we just comply. By the way, and I say very respectfully, the many of our customers and projects that we have, they have rules. They are much more stringent than the regulators. Absolutely, much more. They've gone beyond, and not necessarily because, I mean, I'm sure they're concerned about, of course, they're concerned about the health and safety and well-being of the workers, no matter if they're contractors or not. But also they are concerned that not getting lawsuits, because that also triggers legal battles. No, so we need to go beyond compliance. So the next step in green is being proactive. And proactive is that you do things before they happen. No, we have leading indicators. They are more important than lagging indicators. No, we're talking about KPIs, more important leading than lagging indicators.
Sure.
And the last one is the ultimate culture, that everybody takes care of everybody. I mean,
Okay.
I remember going to a restaurant once and seeing in the mirror a sign that says, meet the person who is in charge of your safety. Obviously, you're seeing yourself.
Right.
Meet the person. Well, I erased meet that person. I added meet the persons, because there were other people around you. So in the ultimate model is a way of life. Everybody helps each other.
Okay.
It's not only the safety people need to take care of safety. No, we are all here to take care of each other. And many companies have this wonderful model. I've seen it in Volvo, for instance. In Volvo, probably they don't do it anymore, but many years ago when I was in Sweden, I remember seeing that the workers, like for instance, making a door, and they will make a door, and they were all safe making the door in the vehicle. They would sign inside the door. They would put their names there. Nobody would see it because everything is covered with, plastic or leather or whatever. But it was amazingly how proud were these workers about producing something in a very safe, environmentally sustainable manner. So this model is very important. We need to move in that direction. Now, there's different studies that give you much more color about each one of these stages and how to achieve them. But most of the companies that I see, because I always ask, especially when they're students and they work for companies, from basic, which is level 1, to the resilient, which is number 5, what grade would you give to your company? Usually are between 2.5 and 3. Sometimes I get 4s. I have never seen a 5. Now, I believe I've seen at least a couple companies in my lifetime. They are near 5, and I was very proud to work with them. Now, it's just an amazing place to work. I mean, you know what? This is bad news for us in health and safety and environment, HSE, because in the resilient communities, there's no HSE people. So we will be unemployed.
Well, I was going to say that brings us to the question 8 of how does a successful organization look? And I know this is one of our last ones to take, so I'm encouraging folks to throw questions in the Q&A. So what's a high reliability organization?
Yeah, and this is taken from a good friend of mine who has an incredible book about operational excellence. And Matt, my good friend Matt DiGeronimo, he was a captain in a submarine. He's a U.S. submarine. So, and as you know, the submarines go to places in which nobody knows. No, that's actually their mission. So imagine if something happens there. Well, they put it at risk to everybody is at risk. So you have to do teamwork. You have to be a team player when you are quite a few thousand feet below the surface of the water, and you need to. And he has a wonderful book that talks about what do we need to have, what do we need to do to have this high reliability organization. And the number 1 is leadership.
Okay.
Leadership that lives by giving the example. The leading is also practicing. The culture is extremely important. The culture is everything, the way, as I explained before, we do things. And everything else is based on a management system. And you can see what we have in each one of them. So I guess these are the 3 components they always look for an organization that excels in HSE or EHS.
Fantastic. Vinny, fantastic. This is great. Now we got a little opportunity for a little bit of question and answer. I've got some in the chat. And so, Vinny, let me just kind of summarize a couple of questions we had. Seemed like that when you mentioned stop work, right? There were some people that came in with questions saying, okay, so, but somebody's got to pay for that lost productivity, and think about the lawsuits. And so help us understand, number one, kind of where do we develop our feeling of being comfortable about stopping work, right? Like, should we err on the being overly cautious or less cautious, or how do we mentor others to understand what we mean by when to stop work? And kind of how does that culture work practically speaking? Because we don't want to be stopping work all the time. So speak a little bit more about the stop work culture.
And I would say that it's so hard for the rookies, for the ones who do not know the industry, are young men and women that obviously are very concerned about their future, that they're going to be fired because they do that. In all cases that I have seen that the stop work has been executed, implemented, in all cases, both our customers and us compensated. We had a big meeting and we compensated the employee who actually applied the stop work authority. For us, it's more important that a time NPT, non-productive time, is more important than NPT. Absolutely. All people, all companies that I work, nobody has said, we need to fire this guy or gal because he or she stopped work and that cost us, a certain amount of dollars or other issues. All of them were actually very happy if somebody did, because the consequences are huge. Because we managers know that being proactive save us, besides saving lives and everything, save us a lot of money. So really, the first thing we do is we have quite a few gift cards ready, and in a public event, we commend the work of the person who did it. Really, this is for us, it's a big deal.
It's a culture that celebrates recognizing and pausing, and
absolutely. And some of them, we have also heroes, people who sometimes risk their lives. It comes to my mind an employee that I know that saved the life of an employee who was under the influence. And it could easily die, but he exposed his own life also. Well, these are heroes. Absolutely. They sometimes I don't encourage certain activities, but we humans like to help. But certainly, let me reiterate again that all the people, especially customers, large plants, they had to stop because somebody thought that he or she was not unsafe. It was like a big event, and we celebrated the stop work authority.
Okay. Good. Thank you. One of the other questions that came in was when we were looking at the hazards, of course, weather and how that affects the work can be part of the hazard, right? If you're in construction and it's wet, or there's lightning, or it's freezing, or, you're thinking about transportation, so weather can affect it. But then there's the notion that climate affects weather affects work. So how do we see these things moving as we're going forward and we're thinking about resilience in a world that's always changing? Where does that change that we're seeing in the world fit in with what we're thinking about in the workplace? I might imagine, we might have always had a certain hot inside of a workplace, and it might be getting days when it's hotter and hotter, or places where we don't have AC historically because it never got as hot, and now we need it. So help us understand, how do changing patterns in weather impact what you're looking at in terms of an HSE culture?
Yeah, excellent question. Really, they impact tremendously. And I gave as a member also the board of certified safety professionals, I gave a lecture not that long ago about that subject matter. And we're even talking, if I can add one more, for instance, diseases. Changes in weather bring mosquitoes. Mosquitoes bring diseases that actually we haven't had in the US for a long time. So all of those need to be clearly identified, what we call the job safety analysis. Before we do any job, we need to, together with a group who is executing the job, we need to come out with all the risks, including the weather-related risks. Now, we work in environments that the work is immediately stopped if we have certain conditions.
Yeah.
Thundering.
You're
for instance.
Outside, there's a lightning strike. We know
Lightning
it's
strike,
yeah,
absolutely. We know, and it's heavily monitored, by the way, by our customers, by us. We know what to do. In our cases, many of our activities have to be stopped because we cannot do work when there's some high humidity, for instance.
Okay.
But others can perform work. I mean, planes do what they need to do when it's raining, snowing. So that means they are managing the risk very well. So yes, we see, for instance, we in the Gulf Coast, of course, we see many hurricanes.
Sure.
Many of these hurricanes, it's interesting, many of these hurricanes are dry, depending if you're in the wet side, in the clean side, or the dirty side. And it's not only precipitation, but also high wind. And we are in buildings, we are working heights. So all of this is very important, but weather plays a tremendous role and is one of the factors for creating unplanned events. And we need to prepare for that. And we can take any chances. They all need to be managed. Yeah.
Makes
definitely.
sense. And and kind of one of the questions that we tend to always ask all speakers, right? And this one's particularly relevant here is, emerging professionals, folks that want to plus up their training, right? How do we as leaders create culture that bring other people into this HS&E space? So if somebody was thinking about this as a career, let's say they're an emerging professional, or let's say they're thinking about being a student and they're thinking about this path, or if somebody already is a professional and they want to add this into their path, or they're a leader at an organization and they want to bring some of this culture in, what advice would you give to people to know more about this and how to bring it into their own personal professional practice as well as their institutional environment?
Yeah, let me say a few words about and I hope quite a few students or young professionals are listening to us, that in the HSE world, there are many practical matters that you rarely, for obvious reasons, you don't learn all in college. So it is very important to have a good mentor. And like, for instance, we have in my company and others, mentoring programs. No one is exposed to heavy work, heavy lifting, if I can use the word, right from the get-go. And you can identify them right there with the hard hats. In the hard hats, there is really indication that this person is being mentored. And there's actually a ceremony that we do when this person passes from a helper or somebody who is still green to a different stage. And there's the entire process that we follow. But certainly that's very important. So getting a mentor, getting a coach is crucial. It's mandatory in many cases.
Sure. Are there any
answer your question, or you would
well, this is perfect. If a student was looking to study or somebody was looking to plus up with some additional certification or credential or training, any thoughts or suggestions, right? I mean, you've certainly got lots of both formal and informal training and a number of credentials yourself. Certainly board certification in environmental engineering and science is an essential credential in this space. And as you said, that's the E part of HS&E. You said you collaborate a lot with industrial hygienists, occupational physicians, occupational nurses, all of this space. So any final word of advice you might leave to students thinking about this career or path of things they might want to be exploring?
Well, definitely the certifications are very important. And our certification obviously carries a lot of weight, for environmental engineers, environmental scientists. Also, we have certifications for the safety professionals. They are extremely important. They are very difficult to get, but they are worth it because it shows that you are trained. It requires a lot of hours, refreshers and so forth. The refreshers in our industry for health and safety is very common. The refreshers are always, every single day we're talking with my team and my operation friends and managers that we need to do those refreshers. There is an interesting last question here that I see. Then I don't know if we have a few more minutes there from one of
If you want to mention about, yeah, sure, go for it.
about what happens if you go to and work in a place that does not have the culture that you have.
Okay.
Well, we will never go below, only higher. So our rule is very simple. Our rule is we just get from what we have, we get the standard that is the highest. In some of our customers, I mean, we can give you a very good example. No, we usually carry a monitor that measures a very deadly gas, which is called H2S. No? And many environmental engineers and scientists know about this because H2S is very common with waters that are not in circulation. There is bacteria that creates this product that can cause death, definitely. No? So usually our monitors that we carry, no, around our face, around our nose, it goes off at 10 ppm. The 10 ppm, nobody really is going to get any permanent, or not going to have any permanent damage, or not going to be hurt really. But there are some companies that mandate that it goes 5 ppm. So if this is what the customer wants, we do 5. Definitely, no doubt about it. We believe that 10, OSHA has said it, that 10 is fine. Absolutely. If there is any issues with dust, on top of the regulations or the rules that we have, absolutely, we adopt it. So we never go below, always go higher.
Well,
but always is how you manage the situation. You may be working with other contractors and other operators and so forth. Usually our work is not just only we're the only ones who are performing. We are others. There are other groups, other companies with different cultures. But it's something we need to always manage in such a way that our workers are protected, but also others are protected. And if the culture in a group is such that we cannot work, we will not take the work. Definitely. We cannot take the risk and put people in harm's way.
Thank you. Thank you. As a quick reminder to all, before we wrap up here and say thanks to Dr. Flores, remember the American Academy for Environmental Engineers and Scientists offers board certification in environmental engineering and environmental science. And one of our specialty areas is industrial hygiene. So remember, you can be certified in water, wastewater, you can be certified in air, you can be certified in site and hazardous waste, but industrial hygiene, radiation, those are areas that we also certify in. And so as individuals are looking for certification in those areas, just a plug for our own academy. With that, I'm going to say round of applause for Dr. Flores. Thank you for joining us today, Vinny. Incredibly informative webinar. I mean, everybody's going to thoroughly enjoy this. And with that, I will turn it over to Marissa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone, for all your questions. And thank you to our speaker for sharing your knowledge with us today. We have several webinars planned in the near future, so you can go to aaees.org/events and you can reserve your spot there. Just a reminder, if you're not yet an Academy member and you're considering joining, you can email me and we can discuss our membership options. Our PDH certificates for this event will be sent out sometime this week. That's all for now. We enjoyed being with you all today. Thank you so much and have a great day.